It is a beautiful documentary. And as I watched it, one of the things I was thinking is that you would have spent hours poring over video of your brother, pictures of him, but also interviews with him. And what was that like?
At times it was really emotional. It was always emotional, Ian, to be honest. You know, I've said in the past that working on it made me feel closer to my brother, but I don't know if it really did. It made me miss him more the more I worked on it. I feel like over time. And then I'd have these little moments going through my brother Patrick and I have all his old notebooks. And, you know, going through those was fascinating. And then something would occur to me and I'd be like, oh, no, I won't ask him. You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But going over Gord's old performances and stuff like that, yeah, it was like everything. Like I would feel excitement and I would feel some sadness and a lot of gratitude for what he did, which was, you know, a guy from a real small town, and I don't mean Kingston, I mean Amersfoort, because that's where we grew up. And then we moved to the big city, which was Kingston. And so for this guy from Amersfoort to achieve what he achieved over all these years, like I'm still processing it. Like part of me is still, now the documentary's out, is still like, did all that really happen? Did it really happen? And it's like, yeah, it really did happen.
If you only just sink it, man, and I don't want to swim.
So as the older brother who sees his younger brother join a band, the band gets bigger, it eventually becomes iconic. I mean, maybe an overused word, but nothing is more iconic in Canada than the Tragically Hip. What was that experience like for you?
Exhilarating. I don't think I was ever at a Hip show where I didn't elbow the stranger beside me and say, that's my brother up on stage. I just was so proud. And there really hadn't been anyone, you know, in our family, you know, history to, certainly not to do what he did, but to also be in the limelight like that and to be so confident and on stage and in his creation to be so confident. And I don't think I ever got used to it, you know, that how incredible it was.
So your love for him, your admiration for him is obvious. You talk about legacy for the band, but what pressure as a filmmaker? Because here you are trying to do a big piece of Canadian history in this, and you want to presumably protect your brother's reputation to an extent, but you want to be honest. And there are moments in that documentary where, you know, you documented that he contributed to some separation in the band.
Right, yeah. Well, we knew from the beginning that this had to be, I don't like the expression, but it needed to be warts and all, unvarnished. And because I'm Gord's brother making this documentary, so we really needed, and the four surviving members of the band, Johnny, Paul, Gord, and Robbie all agreed that they were ready to tell, you know, the whole story. And when you are 5 people trying to create something every couple of years, yeah, there better be some tensions. We better not be agreeing on everything. And I think all that's kind of there. My brother was so driven. And I got the chance to make some music videos with him and several films. And Gord was not an easy collaborator. He was a good collaborator because the end product would be so great. But the actual process of it could be really, you know, I found it exhilarating. I always loved it, but I always knew like I was dealing with a capital A artist. And so I think you see that in the documentary. These guys, they were getting tired of each other. At the same time, they continued to make incredible music.
It's been a long time coming.
One of the appealing things to me about the documentary is beyond the fact that it's about a band, it is about, as you talked about it, about friendship and about fame and about creative tension and about grief. What stands out to you in terms of those kinds of themes?
You know, to me, I really feel like it is it's about family. Like it really, you'll notice it's a rock documentary, and we spend a fair bit of time talking about the band's parents, all 10 of them, and the role that they played, because it was really important, you know, when they were first starting out, and I think throughout their careers, the support, the love that they got for their parents was really important to them. The 5 guys are a brotherhood. When you start at such a young age, and when you have such a, you know, their cause was common. They believed in the same thing. They were going to, you know, create these songs. They weren't going to go for radio hits. They were going to, for Gord, who became the head lyricist, they were going to tell Canadian stories. They weren't going to try to make them neutral so that maybe an American audience would assume that they're talking about their small town. So, you know, I really feel like, you know, for the band, it was a family. And then, you know, as they moved through time, the people that from those early days, most of them stayed with the band for 30 years. There's Billy Ray, who's their, not a roadie, it's a tech, chief technician, whatever. And Ricky Wellington, the head of security, and Jen Pressey, and these people were with the band like pretty much their entire careers. So I really feel like it's family, and that I go back to the tension a little bit too, you know, like that's what family can do.
Yeah.
Family can handle tension because we're related. We don't have to get along. You know, you can't get rid of me necessarily. I think there was a bit like that with them as well. They were honest and authentic with each other, and they were a family. And by the time we get to August 20th, 2016, where the Hip are performing from Kingston, Ontario for, I think, half the country, 12 million, 13 million people anyway. That family now, I think, includes, you know, 12 to 13 million Canadians, because we're, you know, having this, we're saying goodbye to this band and this great singer, person, Canadian. And I think for a lot of the people, they're also saying goodbye to a little part of themselves as well that was touched by this band, that they felt really invested in. And let me tell you, Hip fans are very invested with that band. So yeah, I think family really kind of covers it all.
Let's move back to another performance on Saturday Night Live. And again, a generational thing, but I think that for a certain generation of university students in particular, they remember exactly where they were when that performance happened, rooting for the band. Where were you?
I was at home hosting a party in our apartment on Mutual Street in Toronto, and taking pictures of the television set. Like, you know, with my, you know, DSLR camera, trying to get really good pictures.
And probably didn't.
They don't really turn out that great when you take pictures off the screen. But yeah, that was, the excitement was so palpable. And it was an amazing night. It's an amazing story of what
Well, the
what
revelation
happened.
in
Yeah.
the documentary that
Yeah.
they were a little too stoned.
It's a pretty nerve-wracking event. Even the sound check and the run-through in the afternoon, literally, we're like, holy f. So, the geniuses that we are, we thought, well, maybe we should just smoke a bit of a reefer before we go. You know, it's never hurt us in the past.
Yeah. There's another part that didn't get in, Ian, which is Gord, our nephew, Jay, that was his 11th birthday. And I guess shortly before Gord left for New York, Jay said, you know, if there's any way you can give me a little, you know, something for my 11th birthday. So Gord actually, at the beginning of the performance, goes like this.
Said I'm tragically hip.
Oh, wow.
For Jay,
Nice.
11.
Come on, just let's go.
Lots of cool insights over 4 hours, I guess, of the documentary. One that I didn't know about till I watched was the Tower Records decision.
Yeah.
So first of all, I didn't realize Tower Records was in Toronto.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's revealed, to me anyway as a viewer, that the Tragically Hip had an opportunity to perform on the roof of Tower Records in Toronto, and then have like favorable placement of their records at all the Tower, you know, around the world, right?
Correct.
Tokyo, Los Angeles.
Apparently.
And they said no because of their support and relationship with Sam the Record Man. Like I grew up in New Brunswick. I was just saying to somebody the other day, my weekly trip to Sam the Record Man in Moncton is something that I treasured at the time and treasure now when I look back at it. That the Tragically Hip felt that kind of connection to a Canadian record chain and made a dumb decision, not a dumb decision, but made a decision not to take advantage of the Tower Records promotion.
Yeah.
That was a cool moment.
Yeah, and you know, it kind of takes you back too to that period because, as they've mentioned, this perhaps wasn't the first wave, but the large international retail, you know, chains, and they'd kind of been, so the Walmarts, and I think it really was for the first time. I mean, obviously, Sears and things like that had already been here, but I feel like this was kind of on people's minds a little bit, that we are going to be losing these independent Canadian sort of retail outlets, and you know, what was more iconic than Sam the Record Man. So, but it kind of blows you away to think that they wouldn't just say, oh my gosh, like that is a massive international, but to have the complete opposite and say, no, we will go with the guy who just is only selling records in Canada. Loyalty, huge part of that band, loyalty. And I think there was something else, that they were always really aware of their fans, and I think that there were other opportunities for corporate gigs and these type of things, and I think they just they had a really high standard, and didn't want, I mean, sellout was also a big, for, you know, independent bands or bands, you know, in the 80s and 90s, sellout was you don't hear it, I don't think, as much anymore because it's so hard to make it perhaps, but there was this real sense of, you know, we've got all these fans, we need to be true to ourselves, and we, you know, shouldn't be doing anything that is, you know, directing their sort of, you know, purchasing or anything like that.
But it's one thing to say no to having your song on a bank commercial, right? It's
true.
another thing to say no to performing on the roof of a record store.
I know. There you go.
Yeah.
But it was out of loyalty, and it's, you know, we won't go into scene by scene, but we know what happens next, and they kind of get screwed over by Sam the Record Man. So it's like,
Yeah, I'm not sure what the moral of the story is.
exactly. So take the money and run.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's fascinating. You know, it's a fascinating part of their history, really.
A lot of people watching this will be huge Tragically Hip fans because there are a lot of fans of the Tragically Hip. But there's some people who are watching who maybe don't really know the band and don't listen a lot to their music. What is there for them in this documentary?
Well, so in doing this, I really kind of thought about three, you know, camps of fans. So we've got the hardcore fan. So we need to
Feed them.
give them some raw meat. And we've got a lot of unseen footage,
Yeah.
performances. In it, the performances we let go long. I don't know if you noticed or not, but there's very few where it's just a music of like a verse of a song. We tried to go longer without interruption of a voice up, you know, coming up. So we got the hardcore. And then we have the sort of casual fan, or maybe even the lapsed fan. And this is meant to sort of give them a little shake up, kick in the ass, and say, look, this is a great band, and maybe you were on board for a while, but this is a reminder. Leading us to the new fan or the non-fan. And I think the beauty of the 4 hours is we can take you from 0 to 100 in those 4 hours. And I mean, that's what film has the potential to do, right? Because if I was to say, well, why don't you sit down and listen to their 14 albums, which one should I start with? It's like, well, that's kind of a tough question, maybe, you know, but by sitting down and hearing the story of these 5 small town guys and how they started out and everything else, it's just such a great story. And while I was doing the shooting scripts for each episode, everything is, you know, I plot out everything very carefully, and then it changes and keeps changing all the way through. But as I was doing it, I kept being struck by just the structure of the story and how good it was, and be like, I don't think I could make this up. the 5 guys from the same small town all go to the same high school. They are all there for 1 year. 2 in grade 13, 2 in grade 11, Johnny in grade 9. And when they finally go to get management, they don't just get a manager that's, I don't know, in Kingston or somebody in Toronto who's, hung out a shingle. They get Jake Gold and Alan Gregg. Alan Gregg, the top political strategist in the country. Yeah. Jake Gold, a very tough-minded, smart, street, music guy. That's who they get. And it just kind of goes on and on and on. So I think for the non-hip fan, I give me 4 hours of your time, and I think I can turn you on to something really cool. And what I really hope the stories kind of follows the linear path. We don't do that in the beginning of episode 1 and episode 4, but otherwise the story, so as I mentioned, is very strong. So we follow it sort of in a linear fashion forward. But the music, we move around. Obviously, when it's in the era and we're talking about a song off an album, then it's in the correct place. But I wanted to take music from later in their catalog and use it up early, because the music becomes more complex, and some of the things that Gord's singing about and some of the, the musicality of it is, whereas in the beginning it's very sort of R&B and it's great rock and roll. But I wanted to have some of that later music come up earlier to set a kind of mood. Are We Family is one of the really, I think, strong moments when we see these guys walking around Kingston and, on their own, introducing the whole idea of coming from Kingston, coming from a small town. Are We Family comes from much later in their career. And then later we hear some of the songs that came from earlier in their career. So very important for me to kind of be moving the music around, because what I want to do is introduce even maybe not the hardcore fan, but to hip fans into music that they might have missed because it came out on records that maybe weren't as, hugely successful as Fully Completely or something like that.
There's some beautiful moments, of course, in the documentary, but there has been at least one beautiful moment outside the documentary, and that was at the Toronto International Film Festival. And Choir sang. I only saw the footage on TV, and it was quite striking.
Yeah,
what
really
was that like for you?
It was amazing.
You are ahead by a century.
Because of this 4-hour screening at the Royal Alex on King Street in Toronto on the opening day of TIFF, and then to have that emotional experience, and then for that, then walk out the front door and to have these guys waiting for us. It was really beautiful. It was really beautiful. Yeah, that was a proud moment. And that was hard not to think about, think about my brother watching something like that, and how proud I think he would be. It was really great. It was really fun. I mean, the Hip don't perform anymore. So, I mean, besides 2 occasions that were very specific, to have everybody out there doing the singing, for them, was pretty cool.
Well, lots to celebrate in the documentary. It was really well done, and nice talking to you.
Yeah, real pleasure, Ian. Thank you.